As indicated in the schedule for today, we will now take some time for the launch of the important report that the agency has prepared on the geopolitics of hydrogen. For this launch, I now hand over to Ms. Melinda Crane, who will moderate this segment.
Thank you very much, Excellency, Madam President. And hello, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this launch event in connection with the 12th Assembly of IRENA. It is a great honor to accompany you today as moderator of this premiere. And I know that we all wish that we could have been together in person as in the past, but to keep everyone healthy and safe, we have moved to this virtual format. The report that IRENA releases here today takes us on an in-depth exploration of a development whose profound impact is likely to reshape energy markets, trade flows, and political as well as economic relations between countries and regions. I refer to the geopolitics of hydrogen. And of course, we've just heard considerable mention of hydrogen in that preceding session. And I think it's safe to say that the motto, urgency for action, is equally applicable here. As many of you know, IRENA published its comprehensive look at the geopolitics of the energy transformation, 3 years ago at the 9th Assembly. This new report on the hydrogen factor's role in the epochal shift to clean energy builds on IRENA's comprehensive ongoing research on hydrogen and its implications, as well as on discussions under the auspices of the agency's work stream known as the Collaborative Framework on the Geopolitics of the Energy Transformation, or CFGET for short. Over the next half hour, we're going to hear more about the report itself from IRENA's Director General and from Germany and the United Arab Emirates, which co-chair the CFGET workstream. And following their reflections, renowned international energy expert Dan Jurgen will share his own assessment of the report and its findings on the geopolitical implications of hydrogen. So now, to launch the report, it is my great honor to hand over to IRENA's Director General, Francesco La Camera. Excellency, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Melinda, and nice to see you again today after your performance of yesterday. And again, thanks for having accepted to moderate this session. So, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to launch today our report, the very expected report on the geopolitics of the energy transformation, the hydrogen factor. Melinda mentioned seminal work done on the geopolitics of the energy transformation by IRENA's Global Commission. Among many insightful insights, the Commission noted that given the complex and dynamic nature of the transition, it is difficult to predict precisely how the event will unfold. Please put my first slides on the screen. The report we are launching today is a clear example of this unpredictability. 3 years ago, when the Global Commission completed its work, hydrogen was hardly mentioned and certainly not considered worth a chapter. Today is a highly dynamic sector, rapidly evolving and triggering the imagination of many. And there are two main factors here. First, governments have rallied behind the net zero target, with hydrogen as a critical solution for harder to abate sector. And second, the falling cost of renewables and electrolyzers are improving the economic attractiveness of green hydrogen, opening new decarbonization solutions. There are many unknowns at this stage, and we are yet to see how this will all play out. So let me share a few insights from the report. And this brings us to the next slide. As you can see on this slide, many countries and regions have a hydrogen strategy, and the numbers are growing. This map shows the status of October 2021, and several other countries have advanced since. Just to mention also our country that has presented its roadmap, hydrogen roadmap, in the occasion of COP26 in Glasgow. These plans often come with dedicated resources, including a sizable portion of the COVID-19 Stimulus and Recovery Fund. By August 2021, governments allocated at least $65 billion to support hydrogen. Next slide, please. Many of these strategies involve export or import elements. This slide shows the existing or planned routes, and it's evident they will be different from the hydrocarbon-based energy relationship of the 20th century. We see that countries that have not traditionally traded energy are established bilateral relations. These economic ties are likely to impact political dynamics as well. Next slide, please. It's also evident that geopolitical shifts are closely linked to renewable revolution. The technical potential to produce renewable electricity and in turn green hydrogen exceeds global demand by several orders of magnitude. So countries with an abundance of low-cost renewable power could potentially become producers of green hydrogen. Just to mention in the session before this presentation, this launching, what impact could be the green hydrogen industry in Africa. However, there are many other factors at play that we outline in the report. The emergence of new producers would have an impact locally and globally. They will diversify the pool of hydrogen suppliers, improving energy security for all. And the economic development, especially in developed countries, would contribute to global equity and stability. Of course, this would require targeted support, including technology transfer, investment, and know-how. Next slide, please. Thank you. But as the cost of green hydrogen falls, the hydrogen business will become more competitive. Let me note an obvious but highly relevant point. Hydrogen is a manufactured product and not a raw material or energy sources. Therefore, it can be produced in many places. In turn, it will not generate returns comparable to those of oil and gas today. Nevertheless, it is still an attractive option for countries that heavily depend on oil and gas export to diversify their economies. They can leverage their energy infrastructure, skilled workforce, and existing energy trade relations. While blue hydrogen is a natural fit, especially in the transitional phase, many fossil fuel producing countries have ample renewable potential to produce green as well. And several are considering such options. For instance, our host country, the UAE, as I just said. Next slide, please. As I mentioned in the beginning, there are many uncertainties around hydrogen development. It will be essential to set the right priorities for its use, especially early on. The uptake will greatly depend on predictable demand, especially in hard-to-abate sectors, where no alternatives exist, as we see on this slide. But in this decade, several global priorities must be achieved, including universal access to energy, an essential element of human security. This underscores the need to consider the potential use of hydrogen carefully. There are several other important considerations. The raw materials needed for hydrogen and related renewable energy deployment also add to the current discussion on critical materials. While geological supply for most minerals and metals are presently sufficient, market could become very tight with rising demand and long lead times of mining and refining projects. Of course, this issue requires an holistic approach, including the overall improvement of efficiency and the ongoing innovation, recycle, and reuse, among several other aspects. And there are broader considerations across the climate and development agenda. For example, from a technical perspective, water required for hydrogen use is generally not perceived as a barrier to its deployment. However, climate change is multiplying water risks, including in locations currently seen as promising hydrogen production sites. This could add to resource competition locally and potentially impact energy security of trading partners. Much need to be done to fully understand this broader impacts and ensure positive outcome. We therefore outline several policy considerations to support informed policymaking. We stress the international cooperation will be essential to devise a transparent market with coherent standards and norms that contributes to climate change efforts meaningful. Importantly, we must be reminded that hydrogen is part of a much bigger energy transition picture. So its development and deployment strategy should not be pursued in isolation. I hope this report will help government and stakeholders. Next slide, please. I hope this report will help government and stakeholders navigate the unknown ahead of us. IRENA will continue to examine the geopolitical implication of the ongoing energy transition, and we invite you to be part of IRENA's collaborative framework on the topic. So, thank you, and back to you, Melinda. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Francesco. Fascinating indeed. And clearly, hydrogen is a disruptive force that offers multiple opportunities to those countries and regions that are in a position to harness it, whether as producers and exporters or as importers. Its development, as we heard there, could reshape trade patterns, boost energy independence and resilience. But as we also heard, governments, organizations, and the private sector must act now for these benefits to be realized. Transparent rules, norms and standards, far-sighted infrastructure and R&D investment, all are needed to reduce risks and accelerate gains. So let's go now to the co-chairs of IRENA's collaborative framework on the geopolitics of the energy transformation to hear their reflections on what all of this means. It's my pleasure to hand over firstly to Germany's Minister of State for Europe and Climate, Her Excellency Anna Durman. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Director General Lacambera, distinguished audience. It is a great pleasure for me to speak to you today, as we in Berlin highly appreciate the work done by IRENA. Together, we can truly make a difference. And the collaborative framework meetings on the geopolitics of energy transitions is another case in point. COP26 has made it crystal clear. The global energy transition has to, and it certainly will, accelerate. And hydrogen is the stuff that many of our decarbonization dreams are made of. Borrowing from the motto of our new government coalition treaty in Berlin, I urge you that together we should dare more action. Pledges are important, but need to be followed by concrete policies. A greenhouse gas reduction goal without a path for implementation remains a mere wish. The new German government has therefore doubled the ambition in hydrogen development against the targets in the National Hydrogen Strategy from 2020. This sounds challenging, and it is, but there is no alternative. We cannot and we must not be complacent to make energy transition work, to create large-scale alternatives that are both green and just, efficient heating systems, new mobility concepts, smart grids, etc. I think we all agree this very decade, the 2020s, must become the new roaring 20s, with a flood of investments in sustainable energy and technology. Now, climate change, climate protection, and energy transition all have profound geopolitical and security implications. They will mark the international landscape of the future. And IRENA's new report on the geopolitics of the energy transformation, the hydrogen factor, underlines once more that hydrogen in particular will thoroughly transform energy markets. If Europe and others manage to substitute fossil fuels by CO2 neutral hydrogen, this will have profound consequences for the global markets of fossil fuels, for example. From a foreign policy point of view, it is essential to consider and mitigate security and economic risks that stem from such changes in global energy markets early on. In general, the report leads no doubt that we need to coordinate and concentrate our answers. This is a case in point for a new form of diplomacy, a hydrogen diplomacy. By means of our so-called hydrogen diplomacy offices, Germany promotes dialogue, in particular with fossil fuel exporters, about challenges and opportunities inherent in an energy transition towards a greener and more sustainable economy. We also want to work towards establishing a well-functioning hydrogen market that is open, inclusive, and conducive to international stability, rather than increasing rivalries or undue dependencies. For this to come true, we need binding international standards and agreements. The technology exists, but the regulatory framework lags behind. This means we have to look at, for example, how we want to define green hydrogen and examine issues such as market access and connectivity. Common rules are indispensable for a fair competition. Hydrogen is also a promising topic, of course, for scientific or technological collaboration, as well as for development cooperation. Avoiding a decarbonization divide, as IRENA calls it, between developed and developing countries is an absolute must. There must be less division in the world. All these issues and many more are under close scrutiny every spring by dozens of ministers from all around the world gathered at the Berlin Energy Transition Dialogue. They discuss with business leaders and energy practitioners how our energy systems can become climate neutral. Next to the IRENA Assembly, this is the biggest and most important global gathering on the energy transition, or Energiewende, as we call it. So please make sure to join the dialogue on March 29 to 30 in Berlin. Ladies and gentlemen, we all benefited from the findings of the 2019 report of the Global Commission on the Geopolitics of Energy Transformation. Now it is time to take the next step with a focus on hydrogen. Germany actively supported this undertaking by IRENA from the very beginning. As co-chair of the respective collaborative framework, I would first like to thank all colleagues for their valuable input along the way. But even more so, I would like to congratulate IRENA for this rich and multifaceted report that undoubtedly will be a reference point for future debates. I'm thinking, for example, of the observation that any form of hydrogen might strengthen energy dependence and resilience, but that most of the benefits stand to come from green hydrogen, so that we strengthen energy independence and resilience. I also take comfort in the conclusion that the hydrogen trade flows are unlikely to become weaponized or cartelized due to its potentially wide availability. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Minister of State, and in particular for underlining the message that cooperation and collaboration are absolutely critical to unlock the potential of hydrogen. Let's go next to a message from His Excellency Suhail Mohammed Al-Masrou, Minister of Energy and Infrastructure for the United Arab Emirates and co-chair of the CFGET workstream.
Ladies and gentlemen, today I have the honor of launching an important new report which focuses on the shifting geopolitics of the energy transformation. Through a wide range of evidence and analysis, the report explores the increasing impact that hydrogen is having on the energy sector. Titled Geopolitics of the Energy Transformation, the Hydrogen Factor. The report also looks at the vast opportunities ahead of us if we can harness the true potential of this emerging energy source. For more than a decade now, the United Arab Emirates has continuously supported IRENA, critical work on geopolitics and the energy transition. For our part, the UAE is a founder and a member of the Global Commission on the Geopolitics of the Energy Transformation. And over the last year, the UAE has acted as the co-chair of IRENA's collective framework on the geopolitics of the energy transformation. In this capacity, the United Arab Emirates look on the request from IRENA's member states to conduct an in-depth analysis on the impact of hydrogen on the current and future geopolitical environment. We are very pleased with the results of our field research and work, which was made possible by the sector-wide collaborations with energy experts across the world. We are immensely thankful to them for providing us with their invaluable insights and knowledge into the hydrogen economy, how it is evolving across geographies, and how it is impacting various political systems. Initially, the report confirms what we suspected. The global energy transition will disrupt the current energy systems on a grand scale. It will challenge the resilience of economies. It will require politicians to adapt. As for hydrogen, it will open up a range of new opportunities. It will create new jobs. It will challenge the traditional energy pathway, and it will define sustainable developments for years to come. The United Arab Emirates is ready to embrace the challenges and opportunities that hydrogen brings with it. We have embarked on an ambitious journey to decarbonize our energy and industrial systems by developing clean and renewable sources of energy. This includes developing a blue and green hydrogen economy. Indeed, hydrogen is one of our central pathways to achieving our net zero by 2050 strategic initiative, which our leadership announced at the beginning of October in 2021. And during COP26, the UAE announced its hydrogen leadership roadmap. This is a comprehensive national blueprint designed to support domestic industries through blue and green hydrogen production and use. Through the roadmap, we will seek to leverage our vast knowledge and experience of optimizing the hydrocarbon economy to become a globally competitive hydrogen exporter and further diversify the vibrant economy. We believe that hydrogen will play a critical role in the global energy transition. We believe in hydrogen's power to offer new opportunities and create a cleaner and greener world for all. In conclusion, I would like to congratulate IRENA on this comprehensive report. It will be a critical tool for implementing an inclusive energy transition that works for everyone around the world. Thank you. I wish you a good day ahead.
And we are very grateful to Minister Al-Mazroua, to both co-chairs of the CFGET workstream for sharing those reflections. Ladies and gentlemen, in view of IRENA's far-reaching conclusions on the geopolitical implications of hydrogen, we decided to share an advance copy of the report with the Pulitzer Prize-winning energy expert who's renowned for his trenchant analysis of the geopolitics of fossil fuels following the oil shocks of the 1970s. Founder of Cambridge Energy Research Associates, he is now vice president of IHS Markit and a prolific author whose latest book is entitled The New Map, Energy, Climate, and the Clash of Nations. We go now to Dr. Daniel Jürgen in conversation with IRENA Director General Francesco La Camera.
I'm really excited to have this playing this half an hour together with Daniel Jürgen, discussing our new geopolitics report focusing on hydrogen. So it's really an honor to have you with us, Dan.
Well, thank you. I'm very pleased to be able to join you and to participate in this assembly.
Hydrogen we have been talking about hydrogen some decades ago, but then no one has talked about hydrogen anymore. And now hydrogen is all again there. And what we see that there's been an impressive slowdown of the prices. I remember that a very important think tank last year in July say green hydrogen was going to be competitive in 2050. Then IRENA comes to report, say that green hydrogen was going to be competitive in this decade. And if you talk with the common companies involved in the trade and selling, they say green hydrogen will be competitive in 2025, or already now they are selling their molecule, the green hydrogen, their molecule. How do you see this in terms of the geopolitical impact of this change?
Well, I think in terms of, I guess we can come back and talk about the timing of green hydrogen and why the shift to hydrogen, which I think, maybe I should pause on that because you did talk, there have been previous boomlets in hydrogen, more focused on transportation. I think what's brought it to the fore now is that the hard to decarbonize sectors, industry, hydrogen can play a role. And secondly, also as a gas, there's a question of this switch from natural gas to hydrogen gas. And we talk in our work at IHS Markit about that the infrastructure that exists now for natural gas can be adapted in many cases to hydrogen gas. So I think those are the factors there. Clearly, policy is driving it. I think another factor is that big industrial companies see this as a role that they can play in, because there is a large hydrogen business today that involves oil and gas and other companies, and so they have the capabilities. The thing is, it's still, early days. There isn't yet a hydrogen energy business. I think that's why your report, the IRENA report, is so important in pointing the way. But to get to scale, I think it doesn't, again, like everything else, it doesn't happen overnight. And it involves a lot of engineering to get there. And what I hear from companies who say we can produce the hydrogen, they want to know where the market is. So I think a lot of different factors have come together, but you have an agenda now, you have a degree of participants, and you have a need that you didn't have before. And I think that's the context in which your new report comes out, and all the work that we and many others are doing on what a hydrogen energy economy would look like.
Yeah, I think that we cannot agree more on the fact that two aspects are really relevant in this discussion. One is time, the other one is the scale. So these are the two main components of our discussion on the energy transition. I will completely agree with you. And possibly, as you noticed also in our previous report, we make clear that the most important variable is time when we talk about being in line with the Paris Agreement.
Yeah, and I think that, Francisco, I would say that I think one area where we may be a little different than your report, but your report is a really important document, is that we see a bigger role for a longer period of time for blue hydrogen. And if you have blue hydrogen, that also means that you need to develop this other industry called carbon capture. And but that goes to the issue of time. And, very well-informed people who are players in this have different time frames that they see.
So we are checking daily what we have said last year. This is really something that's our strong focus.
Yeah, and Francisco, I think the next 2 or 3 years will really give us a clear sense of how quickly and is it possible to mobilize the industrial engineering capabilities to bring an integrated chain into position. So I think when you come back and look at this, I mean, your report is a really good starting point, and then I think we should benchmark over the next couple of years.
And if I can say one word more on our vision concerning blue hydrogen, we also consider that there are regions where the economy is so strongly based on the use of gas that we need time to make it happen without disruption that can hamper the move to a cleaner energy system. So I think that is something that we have tried to take into account.
Yeah, I think in the new map in my book, I focused in the new edition on hydrogen, and in particular the point you're making about where is I think partly what you're getting at is the existing infrastructure that can be repurposed to use hydrogen, and then also creating sort of networks of hydrogen. And the need is there, and particularly it's going to be in Europe more than anywhere else, I think, where industrial companies are going to feel a lot of pressure to integrate hydrogen into their production processes because they need the industrial heat. And with the kind of framework that's in Europe, I think that will provide the incentive for European industry to be particularly focused on hydrogen. And then some countries like Australia will be very focused on their capability to be exporters of hydrogen, or the Middle East, Saudi Arabia, Abu Dhabi, whether they're exporting hydrogen directly or exporting it in the form of ammonia. And one of the ways we see it developing, which is not on a local basis, but like developing like LNG developed, liquefied natural gas, big global trade in hydrogen or in ammonia being the way it will happen. So there are different paths there, and we're at the beginning of a new era when it comes to hydrogen.
And that was Dan Jurgen, renowned international energy expert, in conversation with IRENA's Director General, Francesco La Camera. And ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to the end of this special launch event. And in closing, permit me to summarize perhaps just one key message of the new report. Governments, and I think we heard it there in the discussion in regard to infrastructure investment, but not only in that respect, governments have a unique opportunity to proactively shape the advent of hydrogen and to avoid the traps and the inefficiencies of the current energy markets and influence geopolitical outcomes. And as Dan Jurgen pointed out in regard to his comparison with LNG markets, many experiences from the fossil fuel sector can be instructive as the race for clean hydrogen accelerates. Policymakers can also draw early lessons from the trailblazing countries in the hydrogen sector and replicate successful practices. And I think above all, and this message emerges so clearly from the IRENA report, international cooperation will be absolutely essential to effectively navigate the unknowns, to mitigate risks, and to overcome obstacles as we do more with the hydrogen factor in the years ahead. So that brings our session to a close. I'd like to thank Director General La Camera and also IRENA for the insights shared. My gratitude also goes to the session and assembly chairs and to all of you, dear excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, for your attention. I hope that our paths will cross again in future. Until then, stay healthy. I hand back now to the President of the Assembly. Madam, the word is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Crane. Absolutely, I am positive that our path will will cross again. Thank you for your outstanding conduction of this panel. I would